Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Trenton 365 show. I'm your host, Jacque Howard. Thank you for tuning in. This is one of those special arts inspired interviews that we're going to be having. So I want you to settle in and just pay attention to some of the things that I'm going to be talking to Sarah Elizabeth Charles about. But there's so much in this relationship and there's so much excitement. But it's really important for you to get a chance to meet this wonderful human being who's got a passion for other human beings, is very connected to her culture and the importance of sharing that information. And it comes out in this wonderful music that she does. So, ladies and gentlemen, and the Trenton 365 show, welcome virtually, Miss Sarah Elizabeth Charles. Hello, Sarah.
Hi, Jacque. It's so good to see you.
You
It's
as
been a
well.
while.
Yes, and like the old folks say, it's always good to be seen. So
Yeah.
I wanted to do this as like a reintroduction to you, because I mean many folks in the Central Jersey region know you from your music and performing with Regis Jazz and Regis Entertainment, but I wanted to reintroduce you to my audience. And so on your, like, what would be your quick about Sarah Elizabeth Charles and the journey of music that where you are now?
Wow. Yeah, let me try to synthesize this a little bit. I think if my about in this moment, the way that it comes out would read something to the effect of identifying as a vocalist, a musician, a composer, a teaching artist, um, a human, a learner, a human who is always learning in addition to teaching constantly. I believe in that cycle. And I also believe that the teacher has just as much to learn from the student as the student has to learn from the teacher. Um, and just a human being who's moving through and attempting to establish as much presence of mind in their daily life and practice as possible, in addition to in her creativity.
Mhm. You know, I was first introduced to you by Eric Thomas, and at the time you were using a vocal box. And can you share about what that box was and how you used it in that particular performance?
Yeah, to respond a little bit more to your last question, in addition to answering this one, I think my trajectory generally as an artist has sort of looked like, I started studying in the classical realm, classical piano, when I was about 6. Started taking voice lessons, jazz vocal lessons, or private voice lessons from a local jazz teacher in my hometown of Springfield, Massachusetts, at age 8. Her name is Montinia Scheider, and she was phenomenal. And then I started playing jazz with the jazz ensemble, the scholarship jazz ensemble at that music school when I was about 12. Gigged, continued to sing in choirs, continued to kind of learn about and learned through the genre of jazz as my primary vehicle for education. And then moved to New York when I was 18. So I'll stop there for a second. But like that sort of trajectory led me to a space of singing a lot more within the context of traditional elements of jazz and improvised music initially. After moving to New York, though, I really started to get pulled in this other direction of writing a lot more, and original music, playing original music a lot more. And that kind of brought me to this space of um, that brought me to this space of just really starting to discover my voice and open myself up to other possibilities in terms of sound exploration and soundscapes and electronics. Hence the incorporation of the pedal into that space. My first record was much more acoustic. I had upright bass. I did not use many effects on my voice at all. It was not particularly produced. It was very much a live record that was read, and that was released in 2012. But then with my subsequent records, Inner Dialogue, that I released in 2015, and Free of Form, which was released in 2017, those two records started to incorporate much more of the electronic experimentation that I started getting into within the context of my songwriting. So that pedal feels, which is the TC Helicon Voice Live Touch 2, that's my primary pedal that I use. That kind of is like an extension of my voice, an extension of my instrument, and allows me in live performance and in recording to really play with dynamic shape, to play with harmony, to play with levels of um, different levels uh, of like thickness in relationship to the music and my voice. So like I use a doubler and a quadrupler a lot on my voice in certain moments. So anyway, that's kind of that kind of like paints a trajectory a little bit more in relationship to my composer, artistic, recording artist trajectory and what that's looked like and kind of where I've landed in this moment now.
You know, Sarah, I wanted you to just drill down on a couple of terms. So synthesize and dynamic shape. And for the folks who can't really conceptualize what that is in relation to sound and how it moves, can you just share that
Yeah.
with the folks and just kind of go into that a little bit? Because I think that for some folks, it may have just flown over their head, but I get what you're saying.
Totally. So when it comes to thinking about dynamic shape within the context of music, we might think of like loud or soft, right? Or anything in between. So crescendoing, which is to get like gradually louder, or decrescendoing, which is to get gradually softer. That's a part of dynamic shape. But then there are these other elements that you can use to potentially help build some of that momentum within the context of a crescendo or a decrescendo. I also think so with my loop pedal or with my pedal, for instance, which also loops, but it does other things too. I might use or create uh, a moment where I want the music to crescendo via utilizing the delay element in my pedal, or maybe the doubler effect, so that there's more uh, essentially more density in the music, that, and in addition to singing louder or softer, but just to create kind of that consistent density, increase in density, to be able to create that kind of drama. And then in the same way, if I want something to very quickly, so say the crescendo or the decrescendo can happen either very gradually or very quickly. So if there's just a moment where maybe I'm singing really loudly for a second and then coming right back down, um, uh, I might use that delay too, and kind of lean into it in a way and utilize my physical instrument in a way, singing into my microphone through my effects pedal, that allows for that moment to be even more dramatic dynamically. So that's what I mean when I talk about and think about dynamic shape in relationship to my voice. And because we're thinking about jazz and Black American music, and as being like the primary setting for this, that also will influence the musicians that I'm playing with to respond in a slightly different way than if I didn't have those additional elements to my vocal performance.
I'm getting giddy over here because
I can see that.
so when I saw you perform last, um, I guess it was the 2 or 3 times in between I saw you perform, I saw the progress from the vocal box to, I think the last time I saw you perform, you were much more in a space of almost, I don't want to say moving your off to the side and letting the musicians perform a little differently, almost giving them more space to experiment. Can you talk about the experimentation that you as an artist go through, and then the process of releasing that publicly? Because I'm sure um, there's a lot of probably second guessing and does it sound right? Does this feel right during the creative process?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm not sure what those performances were. It's possible that maybe one of those performances was with my band, so
Yes,
that I
yes.
was leading, and then another performance could have been with a different ensemble. So it depends on the group. So at this point, I'm performing with multiple original music ensembles, including my own. So there's my baby, and then there's a Joyo that I perform with regularly, that's a band led by Yassine Bouarez.
Okay.
And I think one of the times that I saw you, I was performing with EJ Strickland and
Yes.
Transient Beings and his
Yep.
electronic
Yes,
project.
yes,
So
yes.
that's a whole other, so it's kind of like my roles in each of those ensembles, or my role is very different depending on the music that's being composed and and what the band leader imagines. For my project, but all of it, what I really love though, and you pointed this out, which I think is really important. The idea that we're all musicians up there together, myself included. I'm a vocalist, but I'm a musician as well. Vocalists are musicians as well. And so we're all up there and we're all really just trying to make the best decisions we can to serve the music. And whether that's with my band where I'm the leader, right? So I'm up front maybe more, or it's a Joyo or EJ's band where I'm maybe like taking a little bit more of a step back. I'm going to try to do as best as I can. This is where the ego needs to like come to the side and the music needs to like speak louder. I really try to practice serving whatever the music needs at any point in time. So if that's taking a step back and letting things become more adventurous, and letting the other musicians that I'm on stage with and that I'm sharing the space with really be highlighted or featured in certain moments, or maybe we're all featured in certain moments. I'm creating this record with this, our fourth record with my band right now, where there are really moments when we're kind of all improvising simultaneously. There are a lot of those moments, and it's fun and it's unclear and it's, you know, it's not necessarily it's definitely not free playing, because it's like within the context of a very clear song structure, but it's very responsive and exciting and dense, to use that word again, very densely packed. There's a lot going on, but we're all kind of, our ears are all, and our spirits are all attuned to what everybody else is doing in a way that allows us to kind of like dance with each other, and that allows nobody to be at the forefront of the music. And that actually is something that's becoming more and more important. I teach a class at the New School called Jazz and Gender. And I'm very much in touch with the Berkeley Institute of Jazz and Gender Justice as well. And Terry Lynn Carrington and I have had, we've been on many panels this year together. And I've heard her talk about what jazz would sound like without patriarchy, without the patriarchal construct. So essentially, almost like what would jazz sound like if that were stripped away, and if the matriarchal elements were able to rise to the surface. And to me, that's the collaboration. That's the moment where nobody's the lead, nobody's the boss, the hierarchy goes away, and we're all just serving the music. And that's the space that I strive to create for my band. And those are the spaces that I strive to be in within the context of the collaborative projects that I'm a part of as well.
Well, that tickles me in the space where I'm thinking about the future, and how does that look when things continue to open up and we can get some more live performances, where that can be what's the initial draw to reach out and let folks know this is an experiment of the artist doing this performance. It's not going to sound like anything you heard on the radio or on something you purchased. This is a live experimentation where the artists are actually just really vibing together, and the public will get a chance to experience it. I've got a bunch of stuff that I want to get to. I hope that I have enough time to. But I wanted to make sure that we talk about listening to everything as a musician, and maybe not everything, but the importance of having having a diverse ear as someone who's in music, especially for young people. And then I want you to touch on your passion for indigenous music from Haiti.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that in terms of, you know, I can only speak from my own experience, and I'm so fortunate that I have this kind of wide array of influence in my in my toolbox or around my orbit. I think that most people who grew up in the time that I did, or who were born, you know, I was born in 1989, so I came up like listening to the radio through the 90s and in early 2000s, and I also came up within the context, as I pointed to before, of like studying classical music and jazz. So there were these two there was the radio, so whatever that was playing that was popular at the time. There was the classical and jazz, more which felt at the time like a more formalized space. Classical much more formalized than the jazz space, because I was also playing gigs with my mentor Vishnu Wood, who was the director of the scholarship ensemble that I studied with. So you know, it felt like I had these two huge areas, and then there was this third area that was much more cultural and familial. I'll maybe be able to answer both questions in one, which was my father's music. So music from Haiti, folk music from Haiti, R.E.A.C.H music from Haiti that he would get from my uncle from the carnivals each year. Essentially, my uncle would send him like the cassette tapes and say, you know, Rico, this is all the music everybody's listening to. And I didn't go to Haiti until 2013 for the first time. And my father hasn't been since since right after I was born. So it's been a long time since he's been, and I've been going separately with an organization that I've worked with called R.E.A.C.H in Fond Prisión, Haiti. But I grew up, that was that third musical space that I was exposed to, and that third space of influence, in addition to the jazz and classical music space and the radio popular music space. And all of those things, all of those styles of music, all of those cultures. And of course, in the radio space, there was, indie rock, and there was neo soul, and there was hip hop, and there was, all sorts of alternative rock, like a lot of things. And there was like clear, just like pop, bubblegum pop. I listened to all of it growing up, and really loved all of it and gravitated toward all of it. And that really has played into so deeply played into, and it influenced my ears and the artist that I am and the music that I write and what comes out. There are some parts of, so our new record that we're working on, our fourth album, is called Blank Canvas. And some of the sonic palettes that we're playing with, I swear to you, Jacque, feel, I was listening with my partner the other day, and also with my co-producer just yesterday. And we were like, wait, is this like a 90s indie rock album? And then something else came up, and we were like, wait, is this a free jazz record? And then something else came up, and we were like, wait, is this neo soul? And then something else came up, and we were like, wait, is this a trap record? Like, there's a lot going on. And the only through line is like, without, again, taking the ego out of the space, the only through line is me, because I'm the person who wrote the music, and the other part of the through line, big part of the through line, is my band, Bernice Earl Travis, John Davis, Jesse Elder, and now Jordan Peters, who's joining, who this will be his first record with us as a band. He joined the band about 3 or 4 years ago, but right after the last record was recorded. So he's not on the last record, but he will be on this one. And then my co-producer Jesse Fisher he also has a huge part in all of this, but it's so many different things. And I love and appreciate that. Actually, years ago, I got, press quotes can be kind of funny, but I got a really good press quote that I was reminded of yesterday, which was a genre of one, that press quote, that like, that's how that particular person experienced my music. And I love that, because it gives me a lot of leeway. So for the young people out there who are thinking like, I need to focus on this one thing and tune everything else out, I can, again, only speak from my own experience, but I would say that there's so much value in letting yourself be drawn to whatever you're drawn to, and be passionate about whatever you're passionate about, while at the same time, of course, doing deep dives within the context of all those things. So if you love hip hop, do a deep dive, learn the history, learn the music, learn the tradition, learn the origin. If you love folk music, with Haitian folk music that I've arranged and explored, like, I couldn't just stay here. I had to do listening. I didn't do my first performance until 2 or 3 years after I started studying that music, because I didn't want to just be flippant about it, or, casual about it. I wanted to make sure that I was learned, and that's not even enough time, but just making sure that we're all like serving whatever comes up as relevant for each of us, I feel like is so important, because so often we'll think, well, that's irrelevant to other people, or I shouldn't care about this, and so I don't. But if we care about something, if we're passionate about it, then that's our spirits, in my opinion, trying to tell us something. And that's something that could potentially be incorporated into our orbit, our creative orbit, and that we shouldn't ignore, in my opinion, my humble opinion.
And your humble opinion has been very consistent, because I remember you talking about that quote in the past, and I also remember you talking about how much time you took in your passion for Haitian folk music, because you wanted to have respect for it. And I think the exact term said is that you told me is that you wanted to do proper justice to the music. I love the consistency.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, we all change and we all grow, but like these fundamental values, right? Like, they stay the same, and they become more informed and richer as we get older. I think, I hope. And I think within the context too of the Haitian folk music, and the popular music in Haiti, the compa, I grew up listening to all of it. That it's just that it's the justice. It's so, if you need to make sure that you're serving the music or doing the music justice, while at the same time authentically communicating it through you, right? So that filter is going to be different depending on who you are and what your creative voice is. My my doing the music justice in relationship to the Haitian folk music that I've covered, has really been like doing the research, studying, listening a lot, and then allowing it to come through my own filter and become something else, in the most respectful way that I possibly can. So it's not about, imitation. There's value of imitation in imitation when you're learning like technical facility, getting your chops, like all of those kinds of things. But then it's about what your individual voice has to contribute to this creative space that we call music. If you're just trying to replicate something that's already been created, for me, that's not where I've lived, and that's not where like my spirit has told me to live. It's been more about learning and then creating something new as a result.
That's good. I mean, that's something that I'll make sure that I'll follow up on later, because that means to me, just as I've seen and everyone else has seen, you're going to keep evolving and progressing. And this journey that you're on with music could literally end up being something that no one even understands at this moment.
Right. I hope that happens. I mean, I hope that the picture that you just painted is true, because I think that will also have resulted from me being able to practice or find a place of self-acceptance, which is like what I'm striving for just as a human generally, right? So authenticity, and then accepting that authenticity is something that I've struggled with as an artist, thinking that like, well, if I'm a jazz vocalist, I need to sound this way, or if if I say that I'm this, then I need to be, do it this way. And it's not, life doesn't, if we've learned anything this year, life doesn't work that way. Life doesn't ask us what what it is exactly that we want, and then gives it to us very clearly in terms of like, here are all of the bullet points that you need to hit in order to hit this like end. It's like the beginning of life, then all of the things you need to do, and then the end of life. It's not clear. It ebbs and it flows, and there are different moments and different paths that you can take and choices that you can explore, and that's part of it. It's like I can move through that with fear of how it's going to be received, or fear of what I will be or will not be, or will be able to do or will not be able to do, or I can move through all of that with an explorative spirit and see what I get, and that's much more fun to me, the explorative spirit. And therefore I think it's going to get weirder before it gets any less weird.
That's sweet.
But it's been fun.
Yep. So I've got a couple of questions, quick ones though. I want you to touch on the impetus behind the song "Another Cloudy Memory," because it was absolutely perfect today while I was just strolling through the garden trying to get myself into a space to interview you, and I was listening to your music, and that really stuck out to me today.
I appreciate you saying that, and I'm glad that it hit you, and that it moved you in some kind of way. That's the hope, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's interesting that you ask about that, because this year, I mentioned this before, our call has really been a year of so much loss for so many of us. And that particular song was about a very complicated relationship for me in my life. Uh, that actually, after writing that song, uh, became much brighter and more brilliant and beautiful, which I really appreciated. That offering of love at the end of that song that I wanted to do for this person, or that was something that I ended up not only being able to offer him, but that he ended up being able to offer me. And it really healed our relationship in a way before he actually passed away late last year. This is my brother. So we lost him in November of last year. And that song was originally about my relationship with him. And it was written years before the healing and the deep dives and the keeping the focus on ourselves and working on ourselves happened. And prior to him passing, you mentioning that song makes me smile right now, because it makes me think about the time between writing that song and recording it and before he passed, because there was so much love and healing communicated. And I don't, it's been a very difficult time in relationship to grief, again, for so many people, and in my life specifically, in my partner's life as well. And it's but we've learned so much about the beauty of the exploration, as I mentioned before, the importance of that, and the fact that we never know what things are going to look like. And so the only thing we can do, or that I can do in this moment, is to like strive to be as present as possible and love the people in my life as much as possible, and show that through everything that I do, my music, my actions, like everything, as much as I can. And I can't do it all the time because nobody can do it all the time. But if my attention is there, even a little bit in every moment, it becomes more possible.
Well, Sarah Elizabeth Charles, I so appreciate you as a person, as an artist, and blessings to you and yours. I can't wait to have you back because we have so much to talk about. And since we ran out of time, I'm going to put you on the spot and hit you up. I want to have another quick chat with you next week because you have so much music that's coming out soon and so much
Yeah.
other news that I can't wait 2 months, 3 months to have you back on. So I'm gonna set something up with you, and we can kind of get back together in less than that amount of time. All right. I so appreciate
Sounds
you
good.
and everything that's going on in your life. I appreciate you. Thank you. Trenton
Thank you,
365
Jacque.
family. We just had Sarah Elizabeth Charles on the program. Not only has she performed locally in the central New Jersey region, but she's right up in New York. She's from Massachusetts. She's doing amazing things. Make sure you head over to the website, all the links, and this video will be on the social media pages, Facebook and Instagram, so you can then share it with your networks. Jacque Howard here, always reminding you it's about justice, peace, and humility.